when I was like younger and first like started learning about my body in that way, started masturbating, all these things, I had this irrational, like obsessive thought that my dead relatives were watching me.
Oh.
And I would apologize to them. We go back, like way back, 21 years back. I'm Chloe.
And I'm Kelly. And we have been friends long enough to know that that kind of connection is rare.
We've recognized a pattern that we can come together feeling overwhelmed and jaded by life, but can walk away from our conversations feeling elevated and fulfilled. Our goal is to have our listeners share in that experience with each episode.
This podcast is our love letter to each other. It has been years in the making, and finally the stars have aligned, and we like to open up our conversations to you. We intend to build a community where no topic is off the table.
In a world where discomfort is actively avoided, therapy is not accessible to many, yet you should talk to a therapist, is a reflex response that denies connection. We have found that talking it out has been a form of free therapy in itself.
We dive into topics like death, divorce, disordered eating, debt, and every taboo topic in between, all while balancing the scales with our tongue-in-cheek humor.
With that, who's ready to get taboo?
Hi.
Hi.
Oh my gosh.
Who's horny?
That literally took my breath away. Like I just lost all air in my lungs. Who's horny? Today is the day of all days.
The day of days.
I can't believe we're jumping into sex.
I can.
Let's talk. You can. I actually really can. Let's talk about sex, baby.
I love it.
Oh my God, I love sex. Talking about it.
Yeah. Well, and I don't think, I don't think we talk about sex enough.
Obviously.
I think it's one of those things where, like, if you think about when you meet someone new, usually, how long is it before you like actually have a real conversation with them about sex?
Oh, they got to know me on a real level.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's because I judge myself. It's so isolating. You know, it's like and like nobody has sex like me. People think I'm weird, or like I just have a fear of like I'm gonna get really real, and everyone in the room is gonna be like, "Excuse me,"
like
yeah, right. We're just at names. I won't say anything. Sorry, my fault. Like it's like, when is the time when you can like actually be real and talk about it?
Yeah,
it depends on the person.
Well, and I think it's so interesting that a significant part of what we attribute to a significant part of our romantic relationships is something that is rarely talked about. Like, if someone's going to talk shit about their partner more often than they will talk about like sex with their partner.
Yeah, that is something that is so interesting to me. I think with time and age, it gets easier to talk about sex with your partner. But there are still times, probably up until the relationship I'm currently in, but especially my last one, we could not talk about sex.
Oh, like with each other?
Absolutely not.
Oh.
And it wasn't a me thing. I have priorities and things that need to get done, if you know what I'm saying. And he would just take it as a personal attack.
Yes.
Why?
I think for like a lot of, I'm generalizing, but I think for a lot of men, it is like, it's a hit to their ego. Right. Because if they're not good in bed, then like, that's what they're supposed to be good at. Yeah, right. But you know, what's really uncomfortable is being like the female in a male-female relationship and having the higher sex drive.
Oh, that's my life. Yeah. I don't know that honestly, I can say I have never been in a relationship with a man who has matched my sex drive. I think as I've gotten older and like my perception and views and needs around like the topic of sex have shifted for sure. And I'm sure we'll talk about that in this episode. When I was younger, it was devastating. Like, because I was younger and like less secure in myself. So I always took it as a personal thing. And I think it's just, I have a very high sex drive and I don't know. I don't know why the guys in my life just have never been able to keep up.
That's really interesting.
Have you had people that match your drive?
Yeah, I'll say like the first sexual relationship that I was in, like I think we matched each other. Like we also had the same Mars placements, the same moon and Mars placement. So like in
wait, explain why that matters. Okay, you read my mind.
So in astrology, your Mars placement like can indicate what your sex drive is like. That's what I'll look to first, is like their Mars placement for how they move. Like
interesting.
It's not just your sex drive. It's like, it's how you move. It's how you take action. But like, what is sex? Taking action and moving.
Yeah.
And it's like, sex is, I mean, when you're like orgasming and like all of that, it's like it's an explosive thing, right?
Yeah.
And Mars rules like explosive things.
Yeah.
In combination with some other placements. But like, that's what I'm going to look to primarily. I'm going to look at like the sign that it's in, the house that it's in, the aspects it's making to other planets.
Right.
But like, if you're getting down to just like the pure essence, like just like the most simple without all the nuance, it's going to be what sign it's in. Right.
Nice. Hell yeah.
So, like he and I both had Mars in Leo and both had moons in Leo. Moon is also how you process things emotionally and how you feel connected to people emotionally. So when you share a moon placement or your moons make like good aspects to each other, it's purely like geometry, like when they make a good angle to each other based on where they are in this circle, that is your birth chart. That can indicate how like well you understand each other emotionally. Right. And like, I don't like using the word compatible in astrology because I think it's exploited. Right. Because I think there's a lot. Well, I mean, we'll go into astrology episodes, but simplistically, he and I had the same moon and the same Mars. So we processed like emotionally in a very similar way. And then we also like had sex in a very similar way and had like a sex drive in that same energy. And it's very fiery. So it's very
passionate.
Well, I would say there's like a lot of motivation there.
Hell yeah, brother.
So
hell yeah.
Anyway, like that speaking was like really fulfilling. And then I got into a relationship where I was like turned down for the first time. And I was like, wait, what do you mean you don't want to have sex every night?
Oh my God. Yeah.
That was jarring.
It's so
like
jarring.
I'm in a new relationship, right? And I'm like, okay, we're going to bed. Like,
yeah.
And he's just like, we don't have to have sex every night. And I was like,
humbling.
What?
Well, especially.
Go ahead.
I just feel like also you see so much in movies. I consume a lot of them and media, you know, the married couple where the wife like doesn't put out or any of that. So when I started having sex on the regular, I was like, no, not me. I'm down. Like, let's do it whenever. And so to be turned down, I was like, was I lied to? Yeah. Was all of it a lie? Because I'm a girl and I want to have sex. And I think that in itself is pretty taboo, right?
But I also want to talk about what you said in the media. Should we come back to that or get into it really quick right now?
Fuck it. Let's just do it now.
Okay. So then I do want to come back to like what that feels like to be rejected and like the lies. But I think this will tie full circle.
Trust the process, baby.
Yeah. So with the media stuff, I had this conversation like over the last week, how women are talked about.
Oh yeah.
And especially like how women are talked about by men and then by other women.
Don't let me go down a tangent with this topic because it'll happen real fast.
And what makes me sad, two things. So there's we were at a wedding and a lot of people were in like the friend group were talking about like the bride as being controlling. And I just immediately like hairs went up on the back of my neck because I'm like, are we still talking about women like this? Because this feels like
it's a bad look.
It feels icky.
Yeah. On her wedding day.
Yeah. And I'm not saying there isn't like maybe in like certain circumstances there might be some truth to it, right? But I always like I'm like, is anyone like thinking about like maybe where that comes from?
Right.
And anyway, so when it comes to like the way, because I think like that can be the narrative. And for me, I was talking about this in therapy. The way I've internalized it is like, well, I don't want to be that girl. So I don't want to be the controlling girl. So I like kind of when I find myself in positions where a decision needs to be made or someone needs to take the lead or someone needs like reminding or any of those things, I'm like, I don't want to say anything because like, I don't want to be the controlling girl and I don't want to be perceived that way because that narrative has been put onto me by other people. Right. And in past relationships.
Absolutely. Oh, I know, girl.
Yeah. And that's so hard.
It is hard. And I especially, you know, in your past, it's been hard to watch you doubt yourself because I know that narrative has been put on you where you're just like, nope. And you hold back, right? Like you kind of shrink yourself down.
Yes.
Right.
And then I heard someone talking about like, well, this person like really struggles making decisions because I don't feel like they're secure in themselves or they don't have the confidence. And I'm like, oh, that's really interesting. Like, cause you're
that's
like giving
perception.
me, you're giving me insight into what's going on with me.
Right.
Like, I don't want to be painted in this way.
Yeah.
But it's like, why are we still like,
why are we still doing this?
Yeah. Why are we still talking about women like this? Because I think what it comes back to is, like, it's like the idea of, like, I'm trying to think like when a little girl is like being bossy.
Yeah.
And like people like have something to say about it.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I don't think you'd say that about a little boy.
No,
like
not at
you
all.
would probably say like, oh, wow, he's going to be a great like CEO.
Yeah.
But
Absolutely.
like when it's a little girl, wow, she's bossy.
Or like she's sassy.
Yeah.
And it's like, what the hell?
Yeah. It's like, good for her. She has a backbone. She's standing up for herself.
Standing
She's
up for herself.
saying what she believes.
Yeah.
With that issue that I've dealt with, it's like I end up in a position then like, for instance, like with like timing, we've talked about this, where it's like, I freak out because like things are like running off track. Right. And then I'm like, oh, I get so frustrated because it like didn't go the way I wanted, but I also didn't say anything leading up to it. I bit my tongue.
Yeah.
Because I didn't want to be controlling.
Right.
And now I feel so out of control, so powerless.
Yeah.
That I like, like now I'm having even a harder time. Like I'm grasping at control.
Right. Yeah. And then you're also, things aren't turning out the way that you want, or things are going downhill because you didn't say anything. It's like, you can't win.
No. But then it shows up in the bedroom.
Yeah.
Because then I'm like not saying like, oh, I don't like this, or I like this and I want you to do this.
Interesting.
And then I'm like getting frustrated while I'm having sex.
Right.
And it is like I'm in such a mind game with myself. Like, say it. No, don't say it. No, don't be like, don't make him feel like you're bossing him around.
You're not only worrying about trying to get off and having the sex that makes you feel good, but you're worrying about his ego. Yeah. It's a laundry list of things to worry about.
Yeah.
It's
and
exhausting.
I'm like holding all this space for everyone else but my orgasm. You know what I mean?
Yeah. She deserves to be the star, dude.
Yeah.
She really does.
So it's really hard when you have like all these society things like, and what's portrayed in the media and like the shutdown wife or the shutdown girlfriend. I'm like, well,
the prude.
Yeah. Or like maybe her needs aren't being met, like emotionally.
Right.
Maybe she doesn't feel safe enough to have sex with you.
Right.
Maybe you don't do a good job.
Right. And maybe she has been vocalizing it. There's just so many different factors. Like maybe she's been vocalizing it and has continued to not get what she wants. So sex hasn't become this mutual experience, but just a chore that she has to do to make her marriage work.
Right.
You know?
Exactly. And then it feels like an obligation. It feels like an obligatory duty that you need to do for your husband so that he or your partner or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Like, so.
And we're talking like, I feel like that is a little bit of a cliche, right? Yeah. Like I do think that sex in itself is so complicated. Even when you're married, even when you're in a monogamous relationship, there's so many different ways to have sex with, you know, multiple partners, one single partner, whatever. But I do think that it's so interesting how much like shame and how much anxiety can be tied to sex. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like,
I think I really struggle with the anxiety piece.
I also
it.
do.
Yeah.
I also do.
In what way do you feel like you struggle with it?
I mean, it's changed as I've gotten older and throughout my life. I think when I was, you know, we'll talk about this, but I started having sex. And I guess I don't like to use this term, but like younger than most people.
Maybe younger than average.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, but I don't even know what average is.
Again, that's another tangent you got to check me on if I start going down it, because I just hate that so much. But you know, I was a teenager and didn't really know what I was doing, so I guess I wasn't super anxious then. But as I've gotten older and you know more like when I was really insecure because of like body, whether that be because of what I've seen in the media or comments people have made to me that I was having sex with or
like what kind of comments if you don't mind
no me. Just I mean I've had sex with people who have literally commented on Oh my God. One time I was having sex with someone and he was like, yeah, let's not do it in that position again because it wasn't a good angle for your body. The complex I carried for so long. It's just so hard, right? It's so hard.
Yeah.
And so jarring.
I cannot believe that. That is absurd. I mean, that's incredible.
At this point in my life, though, I'm like, this is why you make better choices about who you sleep with.
Who you, share your body with.
Yeah. There really wasn't a...
I need some of your water.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
There wasn't what?
When I was younger, it was, again, sex was just so new and exciting that I was like, oh, I don't care if you want to have sex with me. Like, let's just do it. And now I'm at the point where I'm like, listen up.
Listen, buddy. Listen up, bucko.
Yeah. Like bare minimum, you better be telling me how hot I am the entire time.
Yeah.
And not like, I don't know. And that's stupid, whatever. But I feel like
that's your Mars and Leo.
Yeah, no, it's not ideal.
Your Leo is showing.
But I think my biggest anxiety is always like feeling like I have a higher sex drive. And what I will say is that what has really, really helped it is being with someone currently who is really up for critique and tips.
Ooh.
It has changed the game.
That is hot.
My dude. I have never been with someone who was so like, cool, let's try it. And like so concerned about me. And if it doesn't happen for me, also, it doesn't fuck up his ego. He's just like, next time. And it's so refreshing because like maybe I want to have sex way more often. But when we are having sex, it's I feel like he is so willing to learn about me and what I want and what I need. And he's so like, are you okay? He'll stop and ask if I'm enjoying it. And I have just never.
That's like really impressive.
Yeah, man. And
that's so cool.
I've never been someone that like sex is like a hugely like emotional thing for me.
Yeah.
And it's
it can be.
I've had that
most
experience.
of the time it's not. It's like more fun for me.
It's like a fun little like, ooh, let's just like have like it's like playing a board game for me. It's like the same bit, like way more fun. Sometimes
it's like fun, it is. It's just fun.
It's an event.
Yeah.
Like I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Let's do that. That sounds fun. It's not like let's stare into each other's eyes and reconnect via our uglies bumping. You know what I'm saying? Like that just I feel like I'm 50 by saying that. There's a better way to say that.
You have been hanging out with the elders.
Yeah, it's clear in that sentence.
But I kind of love that phrase. I think we should bring it back.
Bumping uglies. Yeah, man. I'm kind of into it. Yeah,
we should title this episode Bumping Uglies.
Sold. You guys saw it live. Jesus. But yeah, I think that is what has helped me overcome so much of my insecurity is that like having a partner who's like, oh my God, like, was that okay for you? What did I do well? What could I do better? Like,
makes a really vulnerable thing really safe.
It makes it more intimate.
Yeah.
If anything, where I'm not someone that I get super emotional during sex, it makes me emotional because I'm like, oh my God, what I don't know how to process you caring so much and making it not about like you getting off. I'm really not trying to shade all the people I've been with, by the way. It's just like an unfortunate pool of people that I have slept with that like really they don't care.
Well, and the other thing is like, we're all learning as we go, right?
Which is one of the scariest parts of sex, in my opinion.
Yeah, totally. Because you're figuring out what you even like for yourself and what feels good and what is like, what's, I don't know, like not... Because it's hard. Like you don't want to get like routined with it, right?
Never.
So it's like it's like a creative place.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it can be. Yeah. Like, and it's different for different people, but for me, it feels that way. It's like, okay, how can we like keep this like fresh and fun and interesting? So because I think so much of being turned on is something feeling new.
Yeah, completely. I totally
So if you're
agree.
doing the same shit over and over, you're like, okay, well, this is tired.
I'm so toxic that if we're doing the same shit over and over, I'm like, okay, what is even the point?
Also, I feel that way. Like
oh my God,
now I've gotten to a point too, like as I've gotten older where I don't want to be having sex every single day. Like, because it's like overstimulating and it doesn't feel good. Yeah. So it's kind of like the same thing. It's like this repetitive, like thing where it's like, okay, this doesn't feel good anymore. Totally. Because I'm just like, I'm raw. Like it doesn't
Good for your man. That is amazing. But yeah, it's uncomfortable. Well,
yeah, it's not comfortable and it's not like enjoyable. It's not pleasurable.
I would say, as stupid as this is going to sound, basically the same thing, but it's like a vibe thing for me. If we are both in the same mindset and in the same place where we are wanting to have sex every day, I am so down to clown.
Yes.
Absolutely. If we are both there, even if I'm a little bit raw, let's just do it because that's awesome. But because I think it is like what people don't tell you, at least in my experience, and everyone's experience is so different. I think we should say that for this podcast. Everybody is different. Every experience is different. So like when I'm speaking strictly from my experience because there's just so many different layers to it. But what was I saying?
That if you're on the same wavelength.
If we're on the same wavelength, I'm back now. Whoa. When you're on people don't talk about how it's really sometimes hard, especially when you've been with someone for a really long time, to be in the exact same place sexually. Like different, like if I'm in a really horny place and I'm wanting to have sex all the time, like there's such a mental part of it too. Yeah. Like I have a partner who struggles with depression really hard and he just doesn't have the same drive I do. And for that reason, and it's something that I've experienced before with other partners or other people that I've been sleeping with that, sometimes it just isn't on the same level. So when it does happen that way and we're both like, oh my gosh, we're just feeling it. We want to keep doing it. Take advantage of it. That's my mindset,
I totally feel you on that.
Not
it
rare,
is.
but
no, but I think it is.
But it's not like when you're a teenager, right? And when you're a teenager, it's like
everything's new.
Rabbits. Right. You just doing it like bunnies.
Yeah.
All the freaking time.
Well, and I think too, because of the fact that there's like this forbidden element, like you're not supposed to be doing it.
Dude,
and, like,
I'm a sucker for it forever.
You have to like be into that. You have to be like sneaking away.
Yeah. Hiding, planning it. Meetups. Yeah. Oh my God. Fun.
Yeah. Because it's like when it's just like available to you at all times, it's just like whatever.
Yeah. There is
I
that
can
little
take it now or later, So how about later?
More convenient time.
I'm like,
I'm bloated.
Yeah. I'm bloated. I just want to rot for a little bit. Like I can't be bothered to like rally sometimes.
Definitely not.
Which I feel like would go a long way in my relationship sometimes.
I feel like it's like the rallying I can do.
Because I'm never upset when I rally. Like it's never turns out bad. It's like working out. Like I'm never upset that I did it.
And sometimes the best sex I have is when I don't want to do it and I do rally and afterwards I'm like, can you imagine if I had not done that? Yeah. Like I would have missed out. Working out. Like I would have missed out or like, that there is something so fun about like the afterglow of it, where it's just like you guys do like are on the same level and have this experience together. And it's not always perfect every time, but I do feel like when I'm not like, if I can, I don't know what I'm trying to say. Like, I guess you have to be strategic about when you do it and how often you do it because you don't have the excitement of when you were younger, like, and it's hard because I find myself, I never thought I would be this way where I'm like, I don't know that I want to do it all the time. Yeah. I still have a pretty high sex drive, but I never thought I'd be at this point where I'm like, I don't know if I feel like doing it. It's wild.
I know. Cause it's like, well, it's another thing where it's like that what's marketed to you. You don't want to be that girl.
Dude, right.
You want to be the hot girl that rallies.
Right.
That's what's marketed to you.
Right.
But I've also learned too, and I've been really vocal about this in my relationship, but as I've learned my cycle a lot better, I've been able to really lean into the parts of my cycle where like my hormones are supporting getting freaky.
Hell yeah, brother.
And then other times where I'm like, no, it's not it.
It's not happening,
It's
babe.
not it.
Yeah, not today.
And like, it's interesting because like in this relationship that I'm in, like he is down for period sex.
Oh, nice.
Down. But like, I'm like, you know what? It doesn't feel good. Like most of the time.
Yeah.
Like, especially in those first couple days, he's like, oh, I don't care. And I'm like, no, it hurts. Like I'm sore and I'm engorged. And like,
it's the engorged for me, dude.
I'm like, it's going to be a no.
There's an absolute no.
Yeah.
It's just distracting.
But like at the end of it, like, yeah, sure.
Oh, who cares?
Like, yeah, exactly.
At the end is whatever. But like in the beginning, I'm like,
I'm down bad.
Yeah, I'm down bad. She's down bad. Everything here is down bad. And I am so distracted by everything going on that I can't even focus.
No,
I can't even focus.
And then because I've learned more about my cycle, I'm like, everything about it feels out of alignment.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is wrong. This is not what I'm supposed to be doing.
When this is supposed to be happening,
No.
we are on a schedule.
So I love you. Take care of yourself.
Yeah.
You know,
I love that.
You have a hand.
Yeah.
I'm not the one.
Not the
today.
one. Not the chosen one.
Not the chosen
today,
one.
Satan.
Give me a few days and I'm your girl.
Yeah, totally.
I'm your hand.
Yeah, but I need at least 3 days.
3, a minimum. Yeah.
Alone, yeah.
I would say 3 to 4 after, like, once I'm on day 4, like, I'm usually like
day 4 is
down.
like hit or miss for me.
Yeah.
Day 5, like that's a joke. Whatever.
It's like
that's
the
fine.
end. Yeah. It's like
who cares?
honestly, I'm just like, I've stopped wearing a cup or any
Jesus.
like, I'm just ruining
It's
underwear
fine.
at this point.
At this point,
I don't
it's
care.
just like a just in case type of thing, you know,
Yeah.
like wearing
I'm
any
over
sort of
it. I've decided it's done.
Sometimes I try to do that where I'm like, maybe I can like will it away if I just like, you know what? No, you are done with this moment.
Yeah.
And I'm usually not.
No. And I usually like have spotting into day 6.
Actually it like just comes back with vengeance and maybe I have like a second half period.
Yeah. I'm just like, oh,
that's super cool.
yeah.
Have you ever had sex and it triggered your period?
Yep.
That happens to me a lot.
Dude, in high school one time I was like hooking up with this guy and I he was fingering me
Hell yeah.
and I started
high
my
school.
period.
Oh,
And
boy.
or I started my period at that time. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like I really
we weren't
don't
tracking
know.
our cycles then. We had no idea.
I had no idea. I was just at the whim.
Yeah.
I was like, take me, mother.
Yeah.
And that was really embarrassing. But it's interesting now. I think a lot of culture has shifted.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of parents are more like our generation now and raising younger boys.
Yeah.
And teaching them about this stuff.
Yeah.
And there's not this like, ew. Like I saw this, it was really cute. I saw this TikTok or something and it was this boy was telling his mom that there was a girl at school that got her period.
I saw this.
Did you see it? And she ruined her pants and he gave her his sweatshirt to wear around her waist. And he keeps tampons in his bag just in case for like his mom or for other girls.
Yep.
This kid's in like 7th grade.
Yep.
And so he like was like, hey, like told her in private and was like, you can wear my sweater and I have some tampons for you in my bag.
Baby.
Or pads or whatever it was, like supplies.
Whatever. Yeah.
And
Totally.
I was like, that's a man.
Yeah, we're raising good boys finally.
Yeah. And I think it would be so cool. I'm excited for like getting to raise kids for those reasons.
Absolutely.
You know, because it's like we can do it differently. We don't have to raise boys who are like grossed out by like female bodies.
I have always
like, I'm sorry, if you're icked out by a woman's period, you don't deserve to be sleeping with a woman.
Yeah. Because I mean, I just think that it's so funny. You can be icked out by a girl's period if you're a person that has your genitals hanging off your body, like externally. Like that is also kind of weird. And girls are totally
and I could
cool
flick
with it.
them and you would cry.
And like you like, I'm sorry, but semen is kind of gross.
Semen's gross.
Like it's gross.
But I'm down for it.
Yeah, I'm okay with it. I'm cool with it, man.
So that's the thing. Like you don't get to like spray everywhere and then be like, no, don't come near me with that blood.
Blood? Are you serious? Yeah. Like at least the thing that comes out of me looks like something you also have. The thing that comes out of you is completely foreign. Yeah. Like I don't have anything like that. No. And it's a jump scare, but I deal with it. Yeah. So you deal with it.
Yeah.
I
grow up.
I feel very fortunate. And then in my own experience, I've never, I don't know, I just time everything bad. And there's been multiple partners where like I've started my period or like I think I'm done because I want to mentally will it away and I'm not done at all. And I've never had someone be like, ugh, or like jump scare.
No, my ex.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
That's so
and he would like, I don't think that he would be like, he wasn't like so outright like, huh? But he definitely like got the ick and he's like, sorry, yeah, I'm just not into it. And I'm just like, you're not the one.
That is the
and
most.
So I divorced him.
That is a red flag, literally.
Literally
a red flag.
Also, he would act, not to put him on blast, but I'm going to put him on blast. Like he would act so put out by like having to do any foreplay.
Oh my God.
It was such a chore. He would do it. Yeah. Don't get me wrong. He would do it because I honestly demanded it.
It's necessary.
Yeah.
It is
But it
necessary.
was like, you could tell he was like not into it. Like he was just like tired. Like he was tired.
Are you tired?
Yeah.
See, that's why that narrative of women not being like being the ones that are like prude or don't put out. I want to flip that on its head. I just think it's bullshit, honestly. And I think that it shows that like back in the day, a lot of media was made for men.
Yeah.
But I have encountered so many dudes where it's not that they act put out, but their sex drive is just, I won't even put anyone on blast and say low, average. But like for me, before I started having sex but knew what it was, I was expecting it to be so different. Like the drive of the people that I was with, my drive, I expected that I would be over it by high school.
Yeah.
I wasn't prepared for me almost exclusively being the horny one.
Well, and I think I also think that's probably just as hard on men as it is on women to have to be the one to have the drive, right?
It's so much pressure.
Yeah, it's so much pressure because it's
totally.
like, what if you're just not down? And like, and I think, okay, it's one thing to like it to feel shitty to get turned down, right? But then on the other side, I think it's also hard to like communicate that, hey, I'm just not actually down right now.
Right.
Like, let's do this later.
Right.
I'm just like not actually in the mood. I think that's also hard.
Devastatingly hard.
Yeah. Because you don't want to hurt the other person's feelings.
Well, and we need to all, I'm calling myself out that even to this day, I have to check myself when, you know, my partner isn't in a place where he wants to or can do it in that moment, not taking it personally.
Yeah.
Because I think it's an old way of thinking to be like, oh, they're not into it right now. It's because of me.
Yeah.
It's not because of you.
No, it
it's
never
not.
Is.
And if it is, then leave.
Yeah. And it's also on them to communicate that.
Yeah. And I think that, you know, as a very anxious person, that's something I'm still having to learn is that sometimes I'm not always the problem. Like I'm not always the problem. Sometimes there are other things going on. And again, with sex, everyone interprets it, experiences it in such different ways that just because someone isn't down, it's not them rejecting you.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah.
And I think that's like, if there was anything I wish I would have learned at an earlier age, it's that most of the time, if you're with a person that wants to be with you and they say no, it's something else.
Yeah. It's also could just be they're not horny.
It's not that deep.
It's not that deep. It could be as simple as I'm not horny. Right. I'm good.
Yeah.
The other thing is that
and you have a right to say no.
Yeah. You have every right to say no. And I think that is, I think more for women is harder to say no than it is for men. But I also,
I wonder though,
or maybe not.
That's what I was just going to say. Cause we were just saying that
actually I shouldn't generalize like that. Cause I really, everything that we just said contradicts
right.
what
not that you're contradicting on purpose. I'm just thinking out loud here that we were just saying.
I think it's just as hard.
Yeah.
I think it doesn't matter.
There's so much pressure for men to always be performing and always be down for sex that I don't know that it would be easy for them to be like, nah. But I know what you're saying. Like you're thinking about like the times that like women want to have sex so bad and like a pompous asshole is just like, ew, no. Like that definitely happens. But I think if men are under all this pressure, which I could totally understand and see of having to perform, having to show up for their ladies, having to make sure that they have an orgasm. That's another thing I think is so important that I've learned getting older. It's okay if it doesn't happen every time.
Yeah, that's the thing too. Cause like sometimes like I'm down, like if my man wants to get down, like I'll get down with him. But it's like if we've been having like sex for like the last like several days in a row.
Yeah, it's
like,
probably not gonna happen.
It's probably not gonna happen and I'm good.
Yeah.
I honestly don't want to sit here and work that hard to make it happen. Every time.
Dude, it's for me to get there. Like I'm
down to connect because he like wants to connect.
Well, and I'm sorry, but does no one else think like sex is super fun without the orgasm? I like the act of having sex. Yeah. I think that sometimes it's just okay to just like have fun with your partner. And I think you're setting yourself up for failure if the expectation is every time I have sex, I'm going to orgasm. And that goes for both men and women. I have been with people men who have been like, I just can't. I don't know why. I'm really sorry. They're not drunk. It's none of that stuff. Like it just doesn't happen. And that doesn't take away from the enjoyment of sex.
Well, and the other thing that like when my partner and I were first dating, sorry, I was away from the mic. When my partner and I were first dating, he talked to me a lot about like how like his friends and him have talked where like when they're like first with someone and it's like new, sometimes they're so anxious and in their head, sometimes they can't finish because they're like so anxious.
Completely.
And it's like embarrassing because you're with someone new that you're so into. Yeah. And you're like, this is like the exact opposite of what I want to happen. Right. But I also was like, how refreshing is it that you and your like guy friends are talking about like something like that? That's really can be really embarrassing if you let it. But it's actually just like so honest.
I would love to be in a room with a bunch of guys who are having like a healthy conversation about sex, not talking about like the, you know, all, not to make it, it's not a gendered thing. You know, people, I think people like talking about sex. I think that's why I get so confused why it's taboo.
Yeah.
You know, but again, through media portrayal and experience, the like locker room talk is garbage. But I would love to be a fly on the wall in like a room of men who are just having like a really honest conversation about their struggles with sex. Like I wish,
or what they do and don't like.
Yeah.
And not in like a derogatory way.
No, just like with women. Like I just watched this episode of Sex and the City where.
Has that aged well? I haven't watched it since high school.
Yeah. Oh no, it hasn't aged well at all, but I love that show. I love that show. Go back and watch it. It's just like single women in their 30s in New York. Like I'm trying to make that happen for me right now. Like I love that show. I grew up watching it because of my mom and with my mom, let's be honest. Yeah. So, but there's an episode where Samantha, like who's like the most sexual one. Yeah. Whatever that means. She's literally with with her partner and she's directing him like, okay, do this, don't do that, do this. Yeah. Keep doing this. Yeah. And it is it's supposed to be funny. And every time I watch it, I like almost get emotional because I'm like,
that is so empowering.
Yeah. Imagine the progress that we would make or how much better the sex would be for everyone if we could do those kinds of things and our egos not get in the way. Yeah. It's easier said than done. Yeah, I'm not trying to sound like I'm like here, like, oh, I'm so confident I can do it. Absolutely not. But as I get older, I'm just like, why are we so afraid to tell our partners what we do and don't like?
I know.
And guys, talk about what you don't like.
Have you watched the Goop special on Netflix?
I have not.
It came out like 2 years ago, I think.
I am very bad at keeping up to date with shows.
But no, it's so good. It's like they have like I think like 5 different couples maybe like from all different like backgrounds or whatever, like struggling with different issues, right? And they go through like different kind of like sex therapy or workshops like with their couple, depending on like what their intimacy block is.
Cool.
And it is so good.
Really?
It's so good. Aww. And I just love that they normalize so much of what's normal. Like they make it not such a taboo thing.
Yeah, totally.
Let's link that in the show notes because it's so good. And it's just so, I think it's really like, it should be kind of like what's leading the conversation in that space. Cause it's, I don't know, it just gets to a lot of the, like the insecurities and the confidence stuff and like the other things that come into the bedroom that aren't really like about the bedroom, but kind of get worked out in the bedroom.
Yeah, totally.
You know, and I just love it. But, but what I think is really interesting is like how American culture is with sex versus other countries and other cultures and stuff. Cause I think about like I don't even know if I'm attributing it to the right countries, but like Sweden, Norway, a lot of those like Northern European countries, Scandinavian countries that are a lot more progressive and where their parents aren't like shaming them and telling them, no, they can't do this thing. Right. When it is such like a natural part of the human experience. Yeah. Right. And how you engage in romantic relationships.
This is such a perfect segue into, what I want to talk about.
And I like something that I wanted to talk about is at least in there, I think in a lot of American culture, there's this underlying like puritanical, like hyper religious and like Christian undertone to things that is really shame inducing when it comes to sex that I grew up in. Yeah. And it was really hard for me to not like be shaming myself when it came to anything like sexual.
Oh, you know, it makes me so sad. But yeah,
it is.
It's very
and it's
normal.
like it's informed a lot of my experience for a long a lot of the shit along the way, right? So like, I mean, I just grew up in a religion where it was like no sex till marriage. That's like, you know, if you don't like want to get pregnant, like you just shouldn't be having sex, like, and that birth control is bad and like abortion is evil and like
it's just so much
shame on you. Like you did this, your fault. You like, you know what I mean? Like it's just so much like blame of the woman. And it it really can be confusing for a kid.
Well, yeah, especially when I mean, I understand that it's a slippery slope. Like I would love to do an episode on religion, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Necessary.
Yes.
It's such a slippery slope, or I guess I don't understand the tactic of certain religions. And I'm not educated in religion. I didn't grow up religious, but as you know, we're human beings, our bodies were made to have sex. And as kids who are religious are naturally growing up, going through puberty, getting urges, getting curious. Who decided it was a good idea to just scare the hell out of them as a way to control them? I mean, I know that fear is a classic way to control people, but damn.
Yeah. From Mean Girls.
Yeah.
The don't have sex. You will get pregnant and you will die.
Yeah.
Like that is like, it was so funny, but it's like, the older I get, I'm like, damn, that
was kind of your experience?
Well, yes and no, but like just the fact that like, I mean, that was such a, that scene is such a, what's the word for like a societal joke kind of, or like a,
oh God, you're putting me on the spot.
Like I'm thinking like Animal Farm, like it's a satire.
Oh yeah.
It's like a very, and I don't know if that's the appropriate use of satire, but that scene is so true, like at the core of basically what sex education in America is.
Right. I feel like that joke is like very facetious and it's supposed to seem really extreme, but it's actually pretty spot on.
Yeah.
It is. Like it's supposed to be so over the top and like ridiculous and like whatever, like shock value, right?
Yeah.
But I watch that scene and I'm like, that seems kind of real.
Accurate.
That's kind of spot on.
Yeah.
And we don't have to get into religion right now, but I was going to talk about, when do we start talking about sex?
Yeah.
Because I just am so curious about why it is so taboo.
Mm-hmm.
Where did we again, our bodies were made to have sex. We are supposed to have sex. It is a part of the human experience. Mm-hmm. So like what along the way got us to where we're at now? I mean, obviously,
I think religion.
And that's the thing is it just religion? Is it just, but take out, yeah, I mean, I guess that is it. But
because so much of religion is like, I mean, I'm respectful of it because I grew up in it and I understand it.
Right.
But at the same time, I think so much at the core of like this really like rigid type of religion where you've like lost the whole fucking point.
Right.
Is a lot about controlling women.
Yeah.
Like there's a quote in the Bible. There's a bunch of quotes of them, but the one that I remember is like it's talking about like marriage and it's like, and the woman will submit to the man. And I'm like, what in the fuck are we reading right now?
Oh God.
Like it's just, it makes me ill.
Yeah.
Like, cause it's just, that is no longer about like your relationship to a higher power.
Right.
That is about controlling women.
Yeah, completely. It's so scary.
It says it very blatantly and you can argue it and twist it around and try to make it fit your point. But like, you could also just take it literally.
Oh my God. And that's like, so many people practice religion and are a part of religion. So then, when you bring it back to sex, like that right there, you're starting to put really weird rules on it and really weird expectations.
And I think that's where it gets taboo.
Right. And so then I think this huge problem is that it's like everything wrong in the world. It's so cyclical. And so, I feel very fortunate and like, shout out to my mom. She had me younger and she, had every opportunity to talk about sex or not talk about sex with me. I think that's a really complicated thing to know how to talk to a kid about when you're that young. 22, I was still figuring out how to have, like, I don't know. That's just, that's still like a very like young person to teach someone about sex when you're still learning about it. Well,
she wasn't 22 when she was teaching you about sex.
No, sorry. She had me at 22, but so then she was teaching me when she was 27.
Yeah.
Like our age.
Yeah.
Sorry. Correction there. But, I don't know. That's just in your, I can't imagine, like I could do it teaching someone about sex, but my mom she did such a good job of keeping our house sex positive. I mean, she really did. I started naturally asking questions at a very young age, just because I'm curious and because she got pregnant with my sister when I was 7. And I was like, okay, the baby's in you. So obviously she's yours, but how the fuck is the baby this guy's, who was my stepdad? I was like, how does that work?
Yeah.
And I was 7. So like we had to have the talk.
Yeah. But I think that's like such a good natural place. Like as soon as a kid expresses like curiosity and asks a question, like that's your opportunity to not dodge it and be so honest. Because the second you are dodgy and make it weird or whatever it is, then kids like pick up on that you're uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And so now I'm learning, I'm picking up on cues. You're uncomfortable. I should be uncomfortable around this.
Or I shouldn't ask you about it because it's making you act weird.
Yeah.
And I don't think this is a hot take, but maybe some people will think it's a hot take. I think that if you are saying to your kid who's asking about sex, oh, well, like mommy and like sugarcoating it or making it cute or making it what exactly it's not, you're doing your kid a disservice. I'm sorry, but you are. And I think that if a kid, like the family I nanny for, I've learned so much from them about like kid-led conversations and that's really all it is. You just have to let the kid lead. If the kid is, even if the kid is 5 or 6 and they're asking what is sex, answer them. Yeah.
Have you seen those conversations at work? What do they look like? Have them. Okay. What does that look like? I'm really curious.
Well, so the little boy that I watch, he is 6 years old. And there have just been times, especially in the world, I'm sorry to bring it back here all the time, but it is internet and kids, iPad generation kids, he's on YouTube. Yeah. People say the word sex. And there's something about that word that I think is just really like piercing and like you hear it and it sticks with you. Yeah. And he's and I remember, I think it was like maybe he was 4 when I started watching him and he heard the word sex. Maybe he was 5. And I texted the moms because I know that I am just going to tell him outright. I'm just going to tell him and it's going to be straight up. And maybe he doesn't know what semen is or any of those things, but at least I'm telling him the truth so that when he inevitably asks again, he can make those connections of like, oh, I've heard that word before. And he asked me and I texted the moms first and I was like, hey, I'm getting these questions. And they were like, answer them. Just answer them. Okay. It's okay. Yeah. You'll be fine. We trust you. Okay. Just answer the questions. And what's also really cool that I think is really important when you're talking about sex is using correct biological language.
Yeah. And not anatomical language.
There it is.
Calling it a penis, calling it a vagina, not calling it hoo-haws and thingies and
all the things like, listen, like my parents definitely loved Chi-Chi. Yeah. There was even a little song.
Like that though, but I think it's fun to use it like more like now in my relationship.
That's what I'm saying. Like it's like a cheech, like that's adorable.
I love that.
That's mad cute.
Yeah. But like when you're actually talking about sex, use anatomy.
Well, and because like the little girl, she's 2. I almost just said her name. Yikes. But the little 2-year-old I watch, she at 1 was saying vulva. And knows what a vulva is. EJ knows what a vulva is. And they've asked, Kelly, do you have a penis or a vulva? And it's clearly there's something ingrained in me where at first I was a little jarred. I was like, oh my God, this like little tiny baby is like dancing around the house singing vulva, but it's beautiful. And I think what's also important if you're a parent and you're going to start talking about like changing bodies and all those things, using anatomical language is also so important when you're teaching about consent. We live in a world where everyone is understandably so hyper aware of their children's safety when it comes to the internet, sexual assault, abuse, all of those things, sexual violence. And that's the other thing is like, I think there is no age too young to teach about consent. And it can look as simple as when a kid is saying, please stop tickling me. I don't want to hug. I don't want to kiss. Even if you're their parent, okay.
Yeah.
Respect that.
Yeah. Because I think what happens is you say, no, they're nice. You need to give them a hug. Kids stop listening to their flags or their cues.
Yes.
Yes.
And then
it gets conditioned out of them. Like then they get into an adult relationship and someone wants to have sex with them, like their partner or whatever. And they're like, well, I guess if you really want it,
Then
you're
it's
really
fine.
nice. So I should say yes instead of being like, I don't want to.
Yeah. I'm in a relationship. Like, and imagine how blurred the lines can get when you're like, no, like that's your aunt or that's your uncle, like give them a kiss. And it's like, but those types of people can very much be people that also harm your children.
Yeah.
And if you haven't given your child the language to be like, this person touched my vulva, this person touched my penis, that you're missing red flags. They have to be able to talk about their bodies. And so to put, these like cutesy names on it is doing a disservice. I was going to ask you, if you were to have kids, at what age do you, because obviously you want to ask the kid or like talk to the kid about sex when they ask questions. But what if your kid is a late bloomer? What if your kid is just really naive and is like a true to their age kid, not like us who are the old souls? Is there like an appropriate age or like a general age? Like if you have a kid that doesn't ask questions, because that happens. Yeah. When do you think you would talk to them about sex and like puberty and changing bodies, all that stuff?
I think it's really interesting that you asked that, because I've thought about that, like, because like my partner was not like an early bloomer like I was.
Right.
So I've thought about that. Like, well, also you could have kids that are just not early bloomers, like something happens. That's different than your experience. Right. And I think that's something to learn from. I think having kids is just, they are little mini teachers born into your life that are here just to teach you more things.
Love them.
So when it comes to those questions or like those topics, I think that there's important ways to have conversation like around it, like before they're asking.
Absolutely. I could not agree more.
And I think it's important to like show affection or show like romantic affection in front of your kids. Like I remember one of my, like a guy that I dated, his parents, I just was always like, I've never seen them like hold hands, hug, kiss. Like they act like just best friends that live in a house and have kids.
Yeah.
And then one time I remember we were like at their beach house and we were getting ready to go do something. And like, I think we were getting up and like getting ready to like have breakfast, whatever. And they were just like in their room, just hanging out. And they were like, what do you guys want for breakfast? So we like opened the door and he had like, the dad had his arm around his wife, his mom, which is like a very normal thing. But we were like,
you were jarred. You were like, what the hell's going on? They're basically having sex.
Yeah. It's what it felt like. So I think that's really important for kids to see that.
That's a good point.
That physical affection.
Yeah.
But as far as like questions go, like, because I'm thinking about, okay, when did like my friends start talking about it? When did like things start coming up? When did like people start making comments? And like people would say things and I'm like, I don't know what that is. Like, because they have older siblings or older cousins or like whatever, their parents exposed them to different things. They seen it on TV that maybe was like a little bit, maybe not age appropriate. I don't believe in sheltering kids from media, but I also think there is like an inappropriateness thing. Like I don't know. It's like one of those things that I can't like put a boundary around like, this is okay, but this isn't.
It's complicated. Because for me, obviously I'm not going to choose to be like, here, child, watch this rated R movie with all of the gore and sex and violence and swearing.
But if it's rated R because there's titties, I'm fine with that.
Yeah. Like, first of all, I have titties. Yeah. If you're my kid, you're going to see my titties. So like, look at the titties on the screen. That's anatomy. That's fine to me. That's fine. But I think that you're setting yourself up to fail if you are, as a parent, trying to shelter your kid from sex and protect them from, and I get the argument, I've heard it before, of like, oh, well, like, I want my kid to be a kid. I don't want them to grow up too fast. And I'm sorry, but in this day and age with the internet and raising our kids on technology, you might as well start as early as you can so that you're teaching them the truth. Yeah. And it's not getting misinterpreted.
Exactly. And that's what I was going to say is like, like I'm thinking about like when I was started to get exposed to it.
Right.
And wanting to have those conversations preemptively. Because ultimately, like, okay, if it's as young as like 4th grade or whatever that you're having, that kids are like talking about this, because they are.
Oh, I would even say younger, to be honest with you.
I would 100% say younger. Yeah. I think it's important to preemptively talk about those things.
About it.
And like, cause I remember, I mean, I wasn't even in school yet. And like the neighbor boy across the street was like my boyfriend, quote unquote.
Amazing.
And, I remember I couldn't spell yet. So he was a year older than me. So he was in kindergarten. Right. And so I was 4, could not spell, but he was my boyfriend. I loved him. And he would like steal his older sister's jewelry and bring it to me.
Oh my God.
And then his mom would have to be like, so like he brought over this thing, and she would just tell my mom, and my mom would be like, Chloe, where's the ring? And I'm like, here, I'm
in love. I don't know how this works.
Yeah, exactly. But I remember we were standing in the living room. We were about to go play in the basement, like me, him, his sister, and my sister. And he was like, I've always wanted to have sex with you.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was just like, and I don't even think he really knew what it meant.
Right. He probably like saw it on TV or something.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or heard someone say it or something. But I was like, okay.
Yeah.
And I didn't know really what it was. I remember feeling like, I don't know if you should have said that in front of my mom.
Because there's something about that word.
And I just didn't really get it. Right. And so then later my mom asked me, I have a lot of like memories actually of my mom following up with me after she's witnessed something happen.
Yeah.
Like, hey, what did you see? What did you, how did that make you feel? Like, what did you hear?
Allison.
Or like, you know, in this instance, she was like, do you know what that means? And I was like, perfect. Yeah. And I think that's a perfect way to introduce that. And I was like, no. And I think she briefly touched on it. I think she was like, okay, we'll talk about it, but it is something like, you know, that grownups do when they love each other. I think it's just kind of like the basic.
Generic. I feel like that's the go-to.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Which is fine.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think I was ready yet to like fully understand it or like cared that much. Like I was 4.
Well, that's the thing is also, not to cut you off, but my mom, she was talking to me about the last episode or our money episode. Yeah. And she made a good point that she was like, it's hard to know how to talk to kids about money because I also feel like they just don't care.
Exactly.
Right? Like
how
do you talk to your kids about these things early on if they don't give a shit?
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's another thing to think about, right? Yep. Is if you don't give a shit, why would your mom go into all this detail
of like
and bore you?
Yeah.
If it's good enough for her to say adults do it when they love each other, put it away until you ask again.
Yeah.
Or like checking in though. Mm-hmm. I think checking in is important too. Like if you have a kid who is just naturally not curious and is just like living their best kid life, not wondering about everything going on around them. I think it is then your job. Cause I do think sometimes parents will be like, oh, I'm waiting for my kid to ask is kind of like a cop out because they don't want to talk.
Because they also might not ask you.
Exactly.
And they're talking to their friends about it. Or they're talking to other adults about it.
Right. And so I think it's really important as a parent to also pay attention to timeline. And as your kid is growing up every year, it shouldn't be this calculated, but I'm a calculated person. Just annually check in and be like, how are you? How are things going? And eventually lead to like checking in with their body. How are people at school? Do they talk about sex? Do they talk about kissing and holding hands? Like there is a natural progress.
Yeah.
And I think it's like, if I were to be lucky enough to have a kid one day, that it is so important to me that they know how to talk about their own bodies, people touching their bodies. What do people like asking them? What do people at school say about sex?
Yeah, exactly.
What do they say? Because I want to know, because you cannot protect your kids from sex. You cannot hide them from the world.
No.
Even if we didn't have the internet, because at one point, obviously we didn't, and technology, kids talk at school. They have older siblings who have sex. They have parents who have sex. Like, why not just get ahead of the curve?
Or some of them are being sexually abused.
And that is a whole other, that absolutely. Here's my thing. If you want to protect your children from sexual abuse, all of the terribleness that goes on in the world, you prevent it tenfold, or like help your kid tenfold by talking about it as early on so that they know how to protect themselves.
Yeah.
And you do that with language.
And I wanted to ask you, when you said that you've had to answer those questions
and it's
with
my favorite
the kids,
part of my job.
What do you say? Like, what have those conversations been?
About sex or about like protecting
anything? Like when they ask you, like what are ones that come to mind?
The first time the little boy asked me about sex, he was like, what is sex? And I was like, it is what two adults do when they either when they are attracted to each other, when they find each other attractive. I don't like to use the language of when they're in love because that's
not always
dangerous.
true. Yeah.
no, I don't love that.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah. No, I think that's a lot more honest.
Yeah. Because the thing is
accurate.
Yeah. And I'm only speaking to my own experience, but
sometimes we're just horny.
Yeah. I've carried a lot of shame until very recent years about the fact that I can have sex with people and I'm not in love. I just want to have sex. Mm-hmm. I just think you're hot.
Yeah.
And I want to bump uglies.
Yeah.
There it is again. Let's count how many times in this episode I say that.
That has to be the last.
Like I'll probably put up a counter every time I say that.
No, dude.
But you know, like there is even that can cause shame. Like I remember being in my early 20s and being like, well, I'm not in love with that person, but I want to have sex with them. I want to see them naked.
Well, and I think there's been times in my life where I'm like, I have no desire to have a relationship with you. Like not even a little bit. You're hot and I literally don't want anything else from you.
I can one up you and say there have been times where I've been like, I literally can't stand the sound of your voice, but I want to have sex with you because you are so good looking, you know, like, and that is human.
Yeah.
So like, you know, when I have this adorable little precious human that I love more than anyone on the planet who's asking me this, I'm really trying to think carefully and be like, all right, well, I'm not going to say it's what two adults do when they're in love. No shade to people that do that. That's valid and perfectly fine. And it's everyone's journey.
Yeah.
I'm not here to parent shame, by the way. I can't even imagine how hard it is, but
no.
I try to tell him when you find someone attractive and beautiful as you get older and your body changes, and you start to feel this like urge or this want or this desire to see them in a different way. You see them in a different light. And that's what attraction is. You find them just so appealing to look at. You like their personality or not.
Yeah.
And I was like, and eventually you know, a way to show that is through physical touch, hand holding, cuddling, kissing. And I explained it to him that quite often it can be like a slow progression.
Yeah.
And he's a really smart kid. Like he was following, he asked questions when, you know, so, and this isn't exact verbiage because I think I dumbed it down a little bit, but.
Well, and I also don't think that you maybe really did to be like, just to push back a little because it's hard to, and I think kids understand a lot more than we give them credit because if they don't get it, they're going to ask.
That is a whole episode in itself.
Yeah.
Stop talking to kids like they're dumb little babies. They are smarter than all of us.
They pick up on so much.
I think it's why you and I are so good at speaking. We're so like the old soul thing. It comes from being treated like a goddamn human being my whole life. Shout out to our moms for that.
Yeah. Our moms did a really good job of like not like.
My mom has always treated me like a fucking person. And it has been the most amazing experience of my life because I have been able to skip over the baby bullshit. I loved my childhood. I had a childhood. I didn't feel like I, you know, in some ways I grew up too fast. That's not because of my mom, but I just think that kids do not get enough credit for how smart they are. They are genius. And, you know, bleep that out, Polly. But he was just so receptive to it. And then he would ask, well, like what goes beyond kissing? And like, I didn't tell him like, oh, well then you give each other head. I didn't go that far. Jesus, here is what a blowjob is. I'm not doing that to him.
You know, what's funny?
What?
I remember it like being in like middle school or high school and thinking like, I wonder if the people in the Bible gave blowjobs.
Listen, you can't say shit like that.
When you should not have taken a drink.
You should have warned me. Trigger warning before you just start talking about Bibles and blowjobs, my dude. B&Bs, that's gonna be a thing one day. Anyway, Anyway,
I've decided yes.
It's already happening in my brain. Also, I just want to point out, like, I'm talking about sex and I love talking about sex and like am a 29-year-old adult. Yeah. I'm blushing. And I'm like, is that me being uncomfortable? I don't know why I would be. I don't feel uncomfortable, but
that's it's interesting to notice.
Right. Like I just wanted to put it out there and take note. Like, why am I blushing right now? Yeah. I am talking about sex with kids, but I think it's just, you know, when you say blowjob, it's, I don't know, like, I guess I'm not as comfortable as I thought or something, but I just, if I'm turning a deep shade of red, I don't know what's going on. But yeah, anyway, it went really well. Did
you explain to him like
penis and vulva? Yeah. They have a book too. Oh my God. They actually have so many books. There's one that's like about bodies. I can't remember the name of it. And I will find them and honestly link them in the notes because they're incredible. If you have children, please show children books about bodies. Anyway, so I took out the book.
Go through it with them. Don't just give them the book.
Don't just be like, here's anatomy.
Because that's I had that happen a couple times or like at friends' houses. And I'm just like, what is this?
Dude, I love that shit though. Do you have those? Oh, sorry. I have a question for you. That's really funny when I'm done. Anyway, yeah, I explained to him like penis in vagina, orgasm, coming, but I use the word ejaculate, I hope. And what happens when like, sperm meets the egg? Like I went into all of it.
Yeah.
I think he picked up on probably about 55 to 60% of it. But to have that conversation at 5 and, he sees those books, they're always readily available to him. And every few months, at least with me, he stumbles on it. And then we have the conversation again. And it's usually kind of the same, but he knows. And like, also, I just want to shout out the family I work for because they do the most sex positive thing. And it is so fucking dope. Ugh, I'm learning so much from them about parenting. It's crazy. But they have a son who's in 7th grade. He's about to turn 13.
Oh, yeah. I always forget.
Oh, my God. Me too. He's just too busy to ever hang out with me. But when he started middle school, they bought him a box of condoms. And they were like, here's how they work. We're going to keep them. He also like lives in his he has his bedroom and own bathroom in their like finished basement. And they're like, we're going to put these in your bathroom. And before they redid the basement, they were just in like the bathroom we all used. And they were like, grab them like as you need. These are for you specifically. Already dope as hell. No shame, no nothing. And then one day I noticed that the box of condoms was open and I was like, oh, holy shit.
Yeah.
Has he talked to you? Like, is he having sex? Like, I am here to answer questions. I love talking about sex. And she was like, no, I did that. So that if he ever needed to use a condom, he wasn't outing himself about the first time he had sex because I want him to want to come to me.
Yeah.
I just got goosebumps. It was one of the most beautiful sex positive like stories, experiences I've ever seen. This kid is 12.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people's reaction would be 12. That's so young. It's not so young.
It's not that young. I had friends that were having sex at 12.
And here's my thing, hot take. I think that if you're going to teach your kid consent and that their body is theirs and that nobody can tell them what to do with their body, it's all up to them. Why are you putting a limit on or like an age of when it's appropriate to have sex? I'm sorry. I think obviously grade school is pretty young and that it just makes me think that there needs to be questions asked if someone's having sex in grade school.
Yeah.
I'm not over here saying, go tell your 5th grader to have sex. I'm not doing that. I would never do that. But I do think that everybody is different. And I think that's a very intimate decision. And there's no way to teach a kid about sex and say you're too young without making them feel shamed. Just let them figure it out.
Because I think when you give them the power and the respect to make their own decision, they're not going more often than not. They're not going to go out and start having sex at 12 because they're actually, they've been taught about it.
That's why you teach them young.
And it's not like this thing that they're so curious about. They understand what it is.
It's not taboo. Bitch. Full circle moment. It's not taboo if you teach them young. And I'm not trying to be on a high horse. I'm just so passionate about like breaking down the taboo of talking about sex with children.
Yeah.
They are also people. And I understand that the intent, just like not talking to kids about money, again, in that episode, you made a beautiful point because I was like, oh, well, I wish that my mom would have told me when we were short on money. And you were like, I don't think that's a kid's responsibility. I do think kids have a right to just be kids and the simplicity of childhood. But unfortunately, as the world progresses and humanity progresses, and even take out how far we've come as people in the different world we live in, everybody has sex. Sex is a part of our existence, and to not teach kids about it really young, to me, in my opinion, I'm not trying to preach, is backwards.
Well, I think you're setting yourself
up. Yeah, you're setting yourself up to fail.
Exactly. Because when you don't respect your kids or trust your kids, then you're already a step behind.
Right. Exactly.
Like you're already losing because if that respect and trust isn't mutual, you're never going to be able to they're not going to want to connect with you because if you don't trust them, they're not going to trust you with things that are sacred, personal, intimate. Completely. They're not going to ask you the questions because it's not safe because they don't feel trusted or respected.
And I think another thing I want to throw in here that I think we should be talking to kids about is masturbation.
Mm-hmm.
I understand that that would be hard to explain. I am not here to again shame parents.
Yeah.
That's the one for some reason for me that I'm like, all right, how would I start with my kid? Like, all right, daughter, when you get the urge to hump a pillow, here's why.
Yeah.
That's hard.
But I think it's important to explain the why. I think it's important for kids to understand why
it's happening and why it's okay and normal and natural and you should be doing it.
Yep.
It is so important to teach kids. Like, I just think of masturbation like it's a way to self-soothe.
And it teaches you what you like.
Yeah. It's teaching you what feels good without like putting another person's like safety or comfortability at risk. It is your thing to do on your own time. It feels good. It soothes you. It's teaching you about your own body. And I've never been around people that shame it, but I think it's more, it just isn't talked about. I think the tactic is normally just let kids figure it out on their own, and they will. But especially for boys, I have talked to multiple previous partners, whoever, guy friends, who have these stories about masturbation that are just wild to me, where like they will be like, one day I had the urge to just grab my penis and I was just shooting blanks and it felt so weird. And I'm like, you just did. And then the first time they actually like ejaculate and they're like, it was terrifying. I had no idea what was coming out of me. It felt great, but I was so confused.
Oh, it reminds me of like when a girl has a period for the first time and no one has talked to her about it.
Oh, I even talked about it with my mom talked to me and you about it very like ahead of time and very honestly. And I still, the first time I got my period, thought I shit my pants. I wasn't ready for it, dude.
My mom, I remember her telling me that no one told her about it. And she got her period early in 4th grade and she thought she was dying.
Yeah. Oh my God. That makes me, you should not have to have that fear.
Yeah.
Especially as a child.
At 10.
That's
to not know what's going on, to think you're dying. And I remember, I remember how like I found out about periods was like, I told your mom, we were at your house and I was like, oh, I think I've gone through every stage of puberty there is to go to and to go through. And your mom's like, well, have you had your period? And
my mom's like, sit down.
And I'm like, what do you mean? And she's like, you need to talk to your mom. Oh and so then I literally went home. My mom's online playing batgammon.
Oh my, that just brought up a memory.
I know.
Wow.
Drinking Zima.
An icon. Yeah. A Y2K icon for that.
Smoking American Spirit.
Oh my God. Yes.
Yeah.
Sometimes I hit. I get it.
Yeah. And I'm like, Mom, what's a period? She's like, oh. Well.
So you've been around Steph and Kelly.
And anyway, and she told me, but it was really good because she told me like her experience with it and like all this stuff. And then I think it was within a year you got your period and then I got my period at your house.
Yeah.
And then I didn't want to tell my mom and your mom dropped me back off at my house and she's like, Chloe has something to tell you.
Yeah. If you're not going to tell her, I'm going to tell her.
Yeah. But I think that was really helpful. Like
totally.
Your mom did a really good job of like facilitating that conversation.
She's a pro at it.
Yeah. It was so good.
No period trauma in our family.
And then,
but it is
like, anyways. So, but when it comes to like masturbation, no one talked to me about that. I don't even know how I figured it out. I mean, I think it's just instinctual. But
oh no.
So I used to have this like irrational, like, so I struggle with obsessive thinking. That's
no, really?
Yeah, that's the thing.
No way.
So I used to like and I grew up in a religious household.
Yeah.
And so when I was like younger and first like started learning about my body in that way, started masturbating, all these things, I had this irrational, like obsessive thought that my dead relatives were watching me.
Oh.
And I would apologize to them.
I want to know, I want to take a poll of all of the people who are watching this right now who grew up in religious households. How many people had that same thought? Because that honestly makes sense to me. It's awful and disgusting.
No, it's awful.
And like kind of gross. Like that's your time and you're thinking about your dead relative.
Yeah, dead male relatives.
Oh,
also.
Oh God, I hate
just like,
that.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I apologize.
And I just remember being like, well, they probably did this too, so they understand.
So it's fine. They get it.
But like, you know,
but I'm sorry for putting you through
God
this.
And my dead relatives sitting there judging me. But that's, I think, the problem with the religion, especially when you don't teach religion in a way that it's like it's about connecting to like your spirit and like it's something that can connect people.
Yeah.
It's like you view it in this way. It's like it creates shame.
Right.
It literally is just
it all comes back down to that. I think that sex unfortunately for our existence equals shame.
Well, I mean, think about like I can't really speak to other religions as much, but like in the Catholic Church, and I don't know about like other Christian religions or just other religions, period. But like priests and nuns take a vow to never have sex.
That's a red flag. Why would you do that?
So it's like when the leaders of your religion are are saying, I'm so pure that I'll never do this thing. Right.
Oh, that makes me nervy. That's a slippery slope.
That's slippery.
Yeah.
Because then it's like, oh my gosh, you're better than me because you're not doing this thing that I'm doing.
It's all
but
fear.
Then it's like, it's also encouraged like, oh, well, you should get married and you should have kids. And to like not want kids is like, that's, you're psycho for that, for not wanting them, which I think is also problematic.
We should talk about that during like our pop culture episode because I have super problems with that.
Yeah, same.
Go ahead. Sorry.
No, but I think it's like, it's really problematic and really confusing to a developing brain who's trying to understand sex for the first time and like make sense of it. And when it has all these connotations, it's spoken about in a really weird way that people get really fucking weird around it. Yeah. And then you're told like, oh, if you want to be the purest form of pure, you'll never do it.
Well, I also think what's so frustrating, and this is like not just with religion, I think as a female, the experience that's frustrating for me is there's like all this shame around sex, like don't have sex too young. Your biggest fear is getting pregnant, right? Don't get pregnant.
Because what a shame that is.
Because that's horrible and like it'll ruin your life. And then you hit a certain age now where it's your clock is ticking. What
it's
the
like,
when do you have kids?
Literally there's no middle. It's just like you better not get pregnant. That would ruin your life. To how come you haven't gotten pregnant yet?
Dude, the amount of shame I've experienced, like not in a very direct way, and I know we have to wrap up here, but I think it's really important to talk about that. That also feels pretty sexist to me and like a controlling women thing. Like, oh, okay. So my whole existence, I grew up I started having sex at 14. I was young. I felt terribly guilty about that. And I wasn't even religious. I just felt like a slut. Don't get pregnant, get on birth control. And like, I understand that part of it. You don't want to get pregnant as a teen. I'm not dogging that tactic there. But then, in my 20s, it was like, oh my God, we need to use condoms. We need to have safe sex. And then there was a switch and it was like 28, but especially 29, where I have had people make me feel like I am geriatric and like people haven't made me feel that way. Let me back up. I'm feeling from, I don't know, I guess society and insecurity because I want kids so bad that I'm like, oh my God, my time is running out. And like people say that you only have viable eggs until whatever. Well,
and the other thing about like, I felt like a lot of shame about wanting kids. Like, I think that there's this new shift because it's okay to not want kids.
It is.
I felt like, especially when I was younger and I'm like 20, 23, 25. And like, no, I really do want kids, but I'm like, I better not fucking talk about it because I'm too young to be talking about that.
Right.
And then
people judge you and they're like, oh, you're one of those girls that just like threw your life away.
Yeah.
You can't win.
No, there's no win.
There's no win. If you're
just
a woman,
in case you were trying to win, don't try. You're not gonna.
If you have a female body, there's no winning. There's no W if you're a female because it's like
we're taking L's.
We L's for life, yo. That is your left hand is the L because it's then
I'm holding both up.
Oh, that works. No W's, only L's. Anyway, I just feel like it is such bullshit. And it ties back into the church thing, right? Like, oh, don't have sex. You don't want to get pregnant. But also, if you don't get married and have kids, like you're betraying the church.
Yeah.
Riddle me that. At what point is it socially acceptable for me to have children? And there's that side of it that's like if you do want kids and you're kind of young, it's you're too young, you need to have a career. But then if you want to be a career girly and not have kids, or you know what, then that's a problem. But
it's like, oh, why?
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know. Like, why do you want them? Or you don't know that someone, maybe they did want them and then it didn't happen. And they had to kind of walk away.
With millennials is like at skyrocketing rates.
Because we've all been on birth control since we were 12.
There's so many things. And then, I just leave women alone. Like leave, and this has to do with sex, but like leave us alone. But sometimes it just doesn't work out in the timeline that everybody else wants it to.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like, I think just shaming people. I think this is a good way to wrap up that like shaming people about when they have sex, how they have sex. We didn't even get to talk about kinks and kink shaming. Like, stop giving a shit about how people have sex. As long as consent is happening, let people do whatever the hell they want with like legal consenting adults.
And I bet if you weren't judging, you like wouldn't have all these suppressed like desires.
And I bet that if you weren't judging and you let your guard down, you could also have fun, kinky sex.
Well, because I think it's interesting, just quick on that judgment piece. I think most of the people that end up doing like having these like the kinks that are causing harm to other people.
Yeah, not okay.
Like where we've now crossed a line, right?
To where it's abuse.
To where it's abuse and it's illegal. I think though that they have such shame that they've projected on themselves. Like they are shaming themselves so much for desires that they have that I think it starts to like make it even worse sometimes. And it comes out in even like in more inappropriate ways. Yeah. Instead of like something that you could engage in with someone else consensually.
I agree. It's
you know
almost
what I mean?
like a cycle of abuse exists there and it's getting perpetuated by continuing to shame people.
Yeah. Then that shame becomes internalized.
Right. And I also think that, you know, when you suppress so much shame or that you experience so much shame, a symptom of that can be wanting to push boundaries and keep pushing and pushing. And that's when you get into slippery slopes. I'm not kidding. I think that not talking about sex with kids at a young age in a like informative, matter-of-fact way, not teaching them language, sex or shame around sex because of whether it be religion or puritanical like ways of life, whatever the case may be, or discomfort because parents they carry shame themselves from like generational trauma.
Yeah.
They
touch on that. It's a huge part of that Goop documentary.
Oh, really?
We have to link it because it's so good. There was this one form of therapy where they went back and like I won't give it away because it's so cool, this technique, but they channel energies of like previous generations and like kind of find the pinpoint or the root of how many generations back this shame or this my God. Or the trauma goes and you can trace it back. It's like, this actually isn't yours to hold anymore. You're holding your great grandmother on your dad's side. Shit.
Oh, goosebumps.
It's so cool.
God, that's crazy.
It's so cool. It's called, I can't think of what it's called.
That's okay.
Families. I don't know. I'm going to butcher it.
Nope. We will put it in the notes.
We'll put it in the notes so I don't have to butcher it.
I want to watch it though. That's incredible.
So good.
I mean, I think like everything else we talk about that's taboo, sex is definitely going to come up again in different ways. There's going to be raunchy anecdotes coming from both of us, I'm sure. I just think the most important takeaway is like getting rid of the shame around sex and teaching sex in a way that is informative and matter of fact, teaching an anatomy that way, teaching, all of that. We want to provide the next generation with the tools to be able to protect themselves and live fulfilling lives where they're not having to learn about their bodies and what they like in sex at 30. Yeah. Everyone deserves that opportunity to have good sex and safe sex and knowledgeable sex. So I think, really, I am so passionate about like breaking down those barriers and using proper language and just normalizing talking about sex.
Absolutely. Because I think when you reparent yourself and then you educate the younger generation, whether it's your kids, your friends' kids, your like whatever, like, and like children that you play an important role in their life, when you learn about it for yourself and then pass that knowledge on, you're creating a better society. Yeah. Like people that are secure in themselves. Yeah. And absolutely. That aren't afraid of this side of themselves. Right. And or then you can engage with each other in a lot healthier way.
Right. I think it's really dangerous when kids are growing up and they go into things blind. And I think that sex is something that so many people in my life, your life, everyone's life have a lot of trauma around. So and maybe this is like my inner nanny, big sister, whatever coming out, but it's just so important that we stop shying away from these conversations. I love talking about sex. I love having friends that I can talk about sex with. And I feel like some of that comes from being so afraid, even coming from a sex positive house, like as a teenager and young adult, being so afraid of being judged. There is nothing to judge someone for. Again, as long as everything's legal and consensual.
Yeah.
And I think that like starting off like in this podcast, I feel safe to say we're going to talk about sex
a lot.
The word anal will come up multiple times at some point.
I'm sure.
I'm
surprised it didn't today.
I'm super surprised.
Well, you just did, but
anal. I just did it again. Anal and bumping uglies. Those were the themes of the night. If there's anything to take away from this episode, it's bumping uglies. So
you're sick.
I am sick.
No, but I love it too.
Yeah. Scorpio stellium. Yeah. Just kidding.
No, I think, I loved that conversation. I think there are so many takeaways, and I think this will be an evolving conversation, something that just keeps going.
Yeah, I think we can just safely say any of the taboo conversations open-ended. They're going to circle back.
I don't think it's ever going to be a complete, because I think our thoughts about it are always
evolving. Mm-hmm. Every year I learn more about myself. I learn more about sex and what I like and how I feel about it. If we would have had this conversation even 3 years ago, I would have
totally different,
completely different views and opinions. So if it's going to be ever evolving,
I wouldn't have known as much either.
Yeah. And I would have just thought that sex was just, dealing with the fact that it's not great. That's kind of putting my previous partner on blast, but like, whatever. Like, I think that,
that's why it's not present partner.
Yeah. All right. You ready to wrap this up?
Yeah. Okay. Right. Well, we'll talk to you guys next time. Thanks for joining us. Bye. Okay, one last thing before you go. There is no us without you. Go like and subscribe our show on your favorite streaming service, and go follow us on all socials at Let's Get Taboo. Chat with you next time.